it's right there. That's what they did. And so the question is, what did they do that for? Did they do that for cancer research? I don't think so.
I don't either.
Okay, and yet this is a cancer research contract. Okay? So number two is, was this done for traditional biological warfare research and development?
I think that's probably a good conclusion.
Well, not really, because why? Because leukemia kills too slowly, doesn't it?
It does.
So it wouldn't be a good bioweapon in the traditional sense, would it?
Not necessarily.
Okay, so what is left? What's the only other option? You're looking at population-reducing agents.
Right, something that would be slow but yet effective.
That's exactly right. And now you've got a virus that's virtually identical to the AIDS virus with one exception. This is a virtually impossible agent to control. Airborne AIDS is virtually unstoppable, or airborne leukemia is virtually unstoppable. Whereas bloodborne pathogens are highly containable. You can spread them through blood, just like the Rockefellers directed New York City Blood Council. Lawrence Rockefeller, for example, put together the New York City Blood Council.
Lawrence Rockefeller?
Yes, it was Lawrence Rockefeller that assembled the New York City Blood Council. That was the council of doctors that put together the New York City Blood Bank. They became the international blood banksters, if you will. And these are the people that allowed 10,000 hemophiliacs throughout the United States and countless others throughout the world to get the HIV-contaminated blood that they knew was contaminated between 1980 and 86 and did nothing significant to clean it up.
Maybe because they had another motive.
Well, that's exactly what the point is.
Hold that thought. We're going to take another break. When we come back, we're going to continue with that thread. 1-800-836-2009, 1-800-836-2009. My guest tonight is Dr. Leonard Horowitz. The book is Emerging Viruses, AIDS, and Ebola, and it's a very disturbing research. But according to this, and again, he has factual documents in here, those don't lie. So we got a problem. We'll be right back after this. I'm Michael Corbin. You're listening to the Paranet Continuum. Is my guest tonight, Dr. Leonard Horowitz. We're talking about his book, Emerging Viruses, AIDS, and Ebola. And, Len, if you don't mind, we'll take a quick call. We've got Steve listening in our affiliate in Juneau, Alaska, KINY. Good evening, Steve.
Good evening. Thanks for this opportunity to comment. Enjoy your program.
Thank you.
And I wanted to ask, in your host opinion, is there a concern, or should I be concerned about taking my cat to the veterinarian for ordinary vaccinations, such as feline leukemia?
I would be, and I would be even more concerned about taking my children into the public health unit to get your free vaccines, or even if you have to pay for them. Again, that's based on the fact that you've got these vaccine-related disorders that are in epidemic proportions today. You know, I'll give you another example. For example, today's chickenpox vaccine, which is being highly recommended for our children. When you read the technical report, it contains in it mercury, formaldehyde, formalin, and aluminum derivatives for stability and sterility. It contains foreign RNA and DNA, which is a nice way of saying carcinogens or mutagens or cancer-causing agents, and they don't even tell you where it could come from. It could come from bovine sources or chicken embryos or viruses or bacteria, RNA and DNA. Basically, you're left unknowing where these things are coming from. And then it tells you it's got herpes viruses in it. Now, it wouldn't bother me if it said herpes zoster because that's chickenpox. But just very similar to the polio vaccines, which not only delivered the cancer virus called simian virus 40 and the other monkey viruses that were in the monkey kidney tissues in which the vaccines were partially prepared, the other types of polio vaccine contaminants included the herpes-type viruses, simian cytomegalo, Epstein-Barr, herpes B, and of course Epstein-Barr and cytomegalo have been associated with chronic fatigue, immune dysfunction, and fibromyalgia, and again, even some of the bizarre cancers.
Len, I have to break right there. We're quick. We're out of time. I want to thank you for being on the program with us tonight. The book is Emerging Viruses, AIDS, and Ebola, and my guest has been Dr. Leonard Horowitz. Now, if you want to get a copy of the book, you can do so by going to a bookstore, or you can get it by ordering direct at 1-888-50-VIRUS. That's 1-888-508-4787. That wraps it up for us tonight. You can reach me at 303-863-0484. My email address is mcorbin@dimensional.com. And, of course, our website is www.paranetinfo.com, and we will have a link to Dr. Horowitz's website as well. So that's it for us tonight. Again, thanks to Dr. Horowitz for being on the program. Until next week, I'm Michael Corbin telling you to keep your eyes on the skies. Good night.
And questioning answers. Here's your host, the Director of Paranet Information Services, Michael Corbin.
And good evening, and welcome to this edition of the Paranet Continuum, home of common sense, no-nonsense paranormal talk radio. And we're continuing with my guest, Dr. Leonard Horowitz, and the book Emerging Viruses, AIDS, and Ebola. Now, if you're just joining us for this second hour, we covered quite a bit of territory during the first hour. Dr. Horowitz is a researcher. He's a doctor who has been looking into AIDS and Ebola viruses, and what he has discovered is very disturbing, and as we've mentioned earlier in the first hour, it's factual, because the book that we're talking about, Emerging Viruses, AIDS and Ebola, is packed with factual reproductions of these documents that he has discovered in his research into this problem. Now, the question is, could modern advances in cancer research and genetic biotechnology have given rise to new viruses and the current and coming plagues? More frightening, could the AIDS and Ebola epidemic have been planned? Again, my guest tonight is Dr. Leonard Horowitz. He's a Harvard graduate, independent investigator, and internationally known authority in public health education. He is one of American healthcare's most captivating motivational speakers. He has authored 10 books, including the critically acclaimed Florida Dental AIDS Tragedy Expose, Deadly Innocence. And it's a pleasure to welcome to the program tonight Dr. Leonard Horowitz. Good evening, Leonard. Thank you for being with us on the second hour.
Good evening, Michael.
Okay, let's kind of pick up where we left off during the first hour. We were starting to get into the CIA research and all of that, and I want to pick up this part of the program and talk about interesting, as I call them, vectors. You mentioned in the first hour Dr. Lawrence Rockefeller as being involved in a peripheral fashion in some parts of this, but the thing I found really interesting is you've done a considerable amount of research into one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world. That's Merck Sharp and Dohme, and the former president of Merck Sharp and Dohme, George Merck. What can you tell us about him?
Well, he was also, now this is highly disturbing. In fact, what I'm about to tell you represents the greatest conflict of interest in the history of the planet. Basically, George W. Merck, the president of Merck Sharp and Dohme, was America's biological weapons industry director, personally appointed by President Roosevelt and Secretary of War Stimson. And he was in this position advising Roosevelt at the time that Hitler ordered March and Bormann to meet with his partners, who were IG Farben, Germany's leading industrial organization, and the Rockefeller family, the Standard Oil people, that at the time that George Merck was advising Roosevelt and Secretary of War Stimson, his company received a major share of the Nazi war chest.
Really?
Yes, in 1944, when Hitler knew he was going to lose the war already, he ordered Bormann to a meeting. Bormann was director of the economy, of Germany's economy, and the Third Reich's war chest. He said to Bormann, he said, quote, "Bury your treasure," end quote, "for we will need it not only for Germany's economic recovery post-World War II, we will need it for, quote, "the rise of the Fourth Reich," end quote. And so Bormann was then told to meet with his partners to discuss where they should put the money. And their partners, as I said, was IG Farben. These were the people that held a patent on the gas that killed those millions of people during the Holocaust. These were, for all practical purposes, the Third Reich.
Right.
Basically, the highest administrators of the company were the highest SS officers. And their full-fledged partner was Standard Oil, John D. Rockefeller Standard Oil. In fact, the partnership was cemented by the Dulles brothers, who was the Rockefellers' legal counsel and business managers from the Wall Street legal firm of Cromwell and Sullivan. They negotiated in 1938 for $35 million that Rockefeller paid IG. Standard Oil received the patent rights over the synthetic oil and rubber that the Holocaust victims were about to produce in the Holocaust victim built and run factories outside of Auschwitz and elsewhere. So full-fledged